In 1888, the Whitechapel area in the East End of London was a centre of poverty, with many people living in crowded and unsanitary conditions. The poor rented rooms by the night in run-down doss houses. Many were Jewish immigrants who had fled persecution in Eastern Europe. In desperation, many women turned to prostitution to survive. On the 31st of August 1888, a 42-year-old prostitute known as Polly Nichols was thrown out of her doss house because she didn't have enough money to pay for her bed. Her quest to find bed money for the night would unfortunately lead her into the clutches of the killer who became known as Jack the Ripper. Shortly before 4 AM, PC Neal was walking along Bucks Row as part of his regular beat when he noticed the figure of a woman lying in the street. At first he thought the woman was drunk, but on closer inspection he discovered that the woman was dead. Polly Nichols had suffered 2 fatal cuts to her throat and also vicious stab wounds to her abdomen. Her killer, soon to be known as Jack the Ripper, escaped into the night. On the 8th of September, Jack the Ripper murdered his second victim. Annie Chapman, also known as Dark Annie, was a long-time alcoholic whose drinking caused her to separate from her husband. It was after this separation that Annie Chapman turned to prostitution as a means to support herself. Annie Chapman was observed by Elizabeth Long talking to a man in a deerstalker hat outside 29 Hanbury Street at around 5:30 AM. She was murdered shortly afterwards. Again, the Ripper escaped into the night unnoticed. Annie Chapman's body was discovered shortly after 6 AM. Her throat had been severed with one long and deep incision from left to right that had been cut through to the spine. A portion of her small intestines were lying on the ground over her right shoulder. Her uterus had been entirely removed and presumably taken away by the Ripper. Jack the Ripper struck again on the 30th of September. His victim this time was Elizabeth Stride. Stride had been seen by various people in the vicinity of Berners Street at 12:45 AM. At 1 AM, Louis Diemschutz turned his pony-drawn cart into Dupville's yard, where he discovered the lifeless body of Elizabeth Stride. Stride died from a 6-inch incision to her neck, but her body had not been mutilated like previous victims, leading to some people to suggest that she was not really a victim of Jack the Ripper. It has also been suggested that the Ripper was disturbed while murdering Elizabeth Stride, and this is why he didn't have time to mutilate her. The Ripper struck again on the same night. His 4th victim was Catherine Eddowes, who had been released from Bishopgate Police Station at 1 AM. At 1:35, Joseph Lowende observed a woman talking to a man at the church passage entrance to Mitre Square. This couple, it would seem, were Catherine Eddowes and Jack the Ripper. Eddowes was murdered sometime between 1:35 and 1:45 AM. PC Watkins entered Mitre Square at about 1:45 AM. In a corner of the square, he discovered the body of Catherine Eddowes. Eddowes had been attacked with calculated ferocity. Her throat had been cut and her abdomen and face had been mutilated. Her intestines had been pulled out and placed over her right shoulder. The left kidney had been removed and her uterus had been cut away. The mortuary photographs speak for themselves. It has been suggested that after the murder, the Ripper may have washed his hands in a nearby street before making his way to Goulston Street, but this has never been conclusively proved. A piece of Catherine Eddowes' apron smeared in blood was found in the doorway of 118 to 119 Goulston Street, which suggests the Ripper may have used the apron to clean his bloody knife after the murder. Did Jack the Ripper leave a message for the chasing police? It is not certain that the Ripper was the author of this cryptic message, but Sir Charles Warren foolishly ordered it to be removed before it could be photographed. Jack the Ripper claimed his last victim on the 9th of November. The murder of Mary Kelly, a 25-year-old prostitute at Miller's Court, Dorset Street, was his most ferocious and savage yet. The first policeman on the scene said that the sight of her mutilated body would remain with them forever, and that the butchered mess that lay there was barely recognisable as a human being. Montague Jewett was a prime suspect in the investigation and committed suicide shortly after the last murder. His family suspected him of being the Ripper. Was his suicide a coincidence, or was he Jack the Ripper? Was Royal Physician Sir William Gull involved in a royal conspiracy to murder the 5 prostitutes, as Stephen Knight, Margaret Kane and Johnny Depp would have us believe? Or was Prince Albert Victor the Ripper, driven mad by syphilis and hell-bent on revenge, and he did match descriptions of the Ripper? Was Michael Ostrog, a mad Russian doctor, convict and homicidal maniac, Jack the Ripper? Or how about James Maybrick, author of the so-called Jack the Ripper diaries, which surfaced in the early 90s and which are suspected of being fake? Polish Jew Aaron Kuzminski was the only suspect who was positively ID'd by a witness, but bizarrely refused to give evidence against him. He is strongly suspected of being the Ripper, but was never brought to trial. So who was Jack the Ripper? Well, unfortunately, nobody knows, and perhaps we never will.